video, I'll be going over to the infill settings. So infill density just kind of is what it sounds like. If you choose 50%, that means there's going to be 50% less material in the center of your print. Um, what you're going to have to think about while you're setting this is how rigid you want your print to be, how much filament you want to use, the amount of time it's going to take to print, and at the top of your print, whether you have these long horizontal expansion, these long horizontal layers. So if you want it to be rigid, you're going to want to have a higher infill percentage. If you want to save on time, you're going to want to have a lower infill percentage. If you're going to want to support these long horizontal layers, you're going to want to have a higher infill percentage. So you're just going to have to take that into consideration. Each print is going to be different, so you're just going to have to get a feel for that. If you want to set it according to how far apart the infill lines are from each other, instead of doing a percentage, you can say I want each line to be 1.6 millimeters apart. So what this would look like is, say these are 0.1 millimeters apart, and then these are 0.5 millimeters apart. You can set the infill percentage like that instead of just giving it a percent. The infill pattern, you've got some options. You have grid, lines, triangles, tetrahedral, 3D cubic, concentric, 3D concentric, and zigzag. So whichever of these you prefer, that's what they look like. Skin overlap percentage, that is going to be the amount that, oh, sorry, I skipped this one. Infill overlap percentage is going to be the amount that the infill overlaps the layers. So you're going to want to choose, I would say you're going to want to do at least 10% so that you have uh, a good connection between your infill and the shell of your print. The skin overlap percentage, I'm not exactly sure why that's in infill, but that actually has to do with the top and bottom layers. How much, so let's say if you choose lines to print your top and bottom, it's going to have these, where is that? It's basically just going to have no air gaps between the passes, and it's just specifying how much it overlaps, just like the infill does. And then your infill wipe distance. So this is going to help fix zits and blobs. So what this is doing is it's telling when to stop extruding filament when you're transferring from printing infill to then printing the shell. So as you transfer from infill to shell, there's still going to be some filament extruding. So you want to stop printing before you get to the shell, so that whenever you start printing the shell, it's not like printing an excess amount of filament. So 0.1 millimeters seems to work for me. If you're having a problem with blobs and zits, then you're going to want to increase this from, say, 0.1 to 0.5 or even higher than that. It just depends on the filament, how hot you're printing it, and how liquid it actually gets. The infill layer thickness just is what it sounds like. If you choose 0.06 millimeters, the actual line thickness is going to be, or the layer thickness is going to be 0.06 millimeters. You can actually save on print time by saying, let's say you have if you have a 0.1 layer height, you can say I want my infill to be 0.2. And what that's going to do is it'll print 2 layers of outer shell, and then it'll print a 0.2 millimeter infill. So you can actually save time on a print by doing that. The gradual infill steps, so what this does is, let's say if I say I want 2 steps for my infill, let's say this cube right here is 10 millimeters tall, and then I say I want to have the infill printed in 2 steps. So it's going to divide it in half, and then the top layer is actually going to be 50%. The bottom layer is going to be 25%. So you can save on print time and you can save on the infill density. So each step you create, the top layer is going to be the thickest, and then it's going to divide it by 2. So it'll be 50, 25, 11.25, and so on and so forth. And the infill will get thinner as you go down. Not sure why that's beneficial, but uh, it's something you can do. And then if you click infill before walls, that helps with this overlap right here. So if you print your infill first and then you lay down the outer wall next, it's just going to help the connection between the infill and the outer wall. If you do the outer wall first and then the infill is going to disrupt your outer wall. So avoid that. I would always just print the infill first and then the walls next. And I think that's already enabled as a factory setting.